Tuesday. Not Sunday. No, Tuesday. I'm doing a Tuesday episode. I wanted to do a Sunday episode, but I was I don't know, I was kind of struggling with a subject of wanting to do that I thought could be helpful. And that's really for me what's in my head when I'm thinking about doing something on this channel. I'm thinking, is it going to be helpful? Is it going to be interesting? I mean, I think that's the first part. And is it going to be helpful for those that may be struggling? And, as I've said before, while I'm not a teacher, I'm not a guru, I'm not someone who can, say I can get you out of your body or I can get you to shift or something like that. I don't believe that that power is within anybody but the person who is trying to do it. That's my belief. But I also I hope that I can say some things that are going to maybe inspire you to connect with that power that's already inside. That's always kind of my goal. So I wanted to do an episode on the reality of reality shifting and astral projection, my perspective. And I always like to put things like my point of view, my perspective, because that's really what it is. It is my point of view. Regardless of how long I've been doing this, it is all my perspective, and things may happen differently for you. But I always say that on this channel, and I hope I don't annoy people for saying that. But I just always want to make sure I get that point across. So, for me, what's it really like? I think we should probably start with astral projection because that's how it all really started for me. What's it really like out there? What's it really like to leave your body? What's it really like to feel the feelings that you feel, right? So I have definitely done that episode where I talked about my first experience as a 9-year-old and how literally it was terrifying and I didn't understand what was going on, even though my childhood friend at the time, and of course there was no internet back then, so we communicated just, people communicated amongst themselves, in person, and there was no communicating with computers at that time. And my friend had told me about astral projection, and I didn't believe it. And that same night that he told me, I had the experience. I felt that feeling, that tingling sensation all throughout my body. It felt like static electricity. It got really intense, and then suddenly I felt lighter than air, and I was floating out of my body, which was amazing and very, very scary. And I was in complete disbelief. Now, this is the feeling that I got the first time when I left my body. I felt that tingling sensation. First and foremost, though, I reached that in-between place that people call, oh my gosh, they call it different things nowadays. I mean, they call it sleep paralysis and they have other words for it. I just see it as an in-between place where I make the transition from being able to move physically to being able to move totally through my mind or moving mentally. That's how I personally see it. It is a transition. So that's my feeling of the transition from being inside my body to being out of my body, at least the first time. And since that time, when I have left my body, it's more like I just pop out. There's no tingling. I'm not going through this whole process. I do go to that in-between place. I do go there, but it is a fairly smooth transition. It feels natural. I just come out. It's just like, boom, I'm out there. And I'm floating around. And then at that time, I have the ability to move from one place to another. Now, when I was a kid, My most exciting thing was being able to fly and walk through walls. And that has felt amazing, still feels amazing. Flying is, wow, I don't know. It's indescribable to be able to jump into the air and just soar. It's become again more of a natural thing to me now that I've been doing it for over 40 years. It's a natural feeling to fly, but the first few times it's just exhilarating. That's all I can really tell you. You really have to experience yourself to really truly, I think, understand. Walking through objects, walking through walls, the weird thing for me has always been that I can feel the actual, I think, the material that makes up the wall or makes up the floor. I remember putting my fingers through the floor, my astral fingers, and feeling the, whatever the materials of the floor were around my fingers and being able to penetrate it and then bring it out. So that is very, very strange. And there was a time, this is so interesting, I see this on the subreddit a lot. There was a time when I thought that the coolest thing is going to be or would be to travel to different countries and, to travel the world and to go to different planets and to, all those types of things. And I see that on the subreddit. I see people talking about how cool that is, going to the moon, going to planets and stuff like that. It's not something that I've experienced a whole heck of a lot of in my experiences. Most of my experiences have been out of the 3D reality. And that was something I could not anticipate. When I was younger, I would read stuff from Robert Monroe and stuff like that. And I mean, he talked about different realities and all those things. But I thought, wow, the coolest thing would be to roam around on the earth. And it wasn't until I connected with my spirit guides, my guides, and they showed me places that I could never, ever, ever have imagined. There is so much out there, and it's what I always want to tell people. People that get stuck in wanting to go to different countries. I have been to places, different realities that are extraordinary. They are absolutely extraordinary. I've talked about many of these places on my channel, and they're just beyond what I could ever have imagined when I was young. So, my thing is, for those of you who are just starting out, keep your minds open. Yes, you can start out going and traveling to these different places and seeing what that's like within this world. But what I'm telling you there are different worlds out there. And in my mind, there's no end to it. You can go forever. I know for me, and I've said this before, I don't believe ever have traveled to the same place twice, and I've been doing this for over 40 years. So consider that. Now, let's talk a little bit about shifting realities and what that's been like for me, for those of you who are shifters. And now, shifting for me has been different. It hasn't been like how people describe it necessarily on the subreddit. And again, that's because I'm a different person, right? Because everybody's an individual. So when I started doing the shifting thing, it was after this really horrible accident, and I didn't know what the heck was going on. I didn't know what shifting was. I had no idea what this was. I knew this was new because this wasn't like astral projection. Even from the beginning, when I would close my eyes and I was tired and I would see places that I didn't recognize at first, it's like looking through a window. I can still do this in the morning when I'm tired, and if I shut my eyes, I can be fully conscious and I can see places. Sometimes they're very dim, sometimes they become sharper and I can actually see them. It's almost like I'm picking up on something, like I'm a antenna or something, and I can see these places. And then at other times, I can become involved in these places. I can actually be there in these places. So that's how it started with me. And I know people have different transitions with shifting, people say that I guess they see lights and they'll feel spinning and stuff. But for me, it's always been consistent. You can go back for me and back to 2019 when I think I started the channel. I started talking about Beyond Body, where there was never anything like that. I just felt a sense of movement. I would feel movement. I would feel myself going off my bed, and then I'd feel this forward motion, and it would accelerate, and it was just going faster and faster. And then, and this was all in darkness, by the way, and then I would get to the place I was going to, and then the darkness would lift, and I would be there, and I'd be walking around, and it would be like I was in a physical body moving around. This was not what it was like when I astral projected. The other part to this was that for me, it doesn't feel like when I shift, it doesn't feel like I'm leaving my body. So I just talked about astral projection and how it feels to separate, right? I don't feel separation when I go beyond body shift. There is no feeling of separation. So I knew this was different. This was so different and so unique, and walking around and feeling like I'm, in the 3D. And I'm moving around in these different places. It is absolutely an amazing feeling. Now, most of my experiences have been in places that have been random. And I know that on the subreddit, they talk about places like the MCU or Harry Potter. Now, I did attempt one time to visit a place. And I remember saying in my mind, once I got to that middle place, I wanted to go to a Harry Potter universe. And again, this is something I posted. It was a pretty popular video. I guess a lot of people were interested in it, but I felt like I fell flat on my face when I did it, because there was no I don't recall there being a Hogwarts or anything like that. What I recall, and I wrote down some of these notes from the Harry Potter thing. What I recall was a lot of chaos, actually. There were literally thousands of animated characters, 3D, and it was chaotic. It really, truly was. And I felt like there was this weight. And I almost couldn't move. And I was holding a wand, and it was floppy. It was just so much stuff happening at once, and I just couldn't take it. It was like every sense was overly stimulated. And maybe, perhaps, again, now I've thought about this, maybe my error was I was saying in my mind Harry Potter fantasy. Maybe I was going to the actual fictional place where the author drew from it in some way. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what happened with that experience. It was a crazy experience. Again, if you want to listen to the full experience, you can go and find that video and listen to it. But it did not turn out anything like I thought it was going to turn out. Now, I know, again, that there are people who shift that want to know certain things, certain other things, like, have you ever left for weeks or months? I see this on the subreddit. There are people who say that they've left for weeks or months. I can tell you right now that I have never done anything like that. Everything that happens with me happens overnight. And, I don't really time it, but I can tell you that I wasn't gone for a week. I wasn't gone for months. I know that there have been times when I feel as if there was a large amount of time that was spent there in whatever reality I was in. But the thing was I didn't bring back the memory. A lot of it was, I forgot about huge chunks of it, I think, after a certain amount of time. It was, let's just say it was difficult to retain. The other part, speaking of fictional universes, anytime I've dealt with animation, and I've seen this on the subreddit as well, people ask what it's like to be in a place like an anime place and what it's like to be animated and stuff. The only thing I can tell you is that when I've experienced things that are animated out there, they seem to be woven into the fabric of whatever is more like our 3D world, like substance. There's no, I don't think I've visited a world that has been completely animated before, but I have seen people that seemed to be, let's just say this to be clear, they seemed almost to be animated and physical at the same time at times. Like when I visited the place where there were all these older folks that were sitting down in almost this outside cafeteria setting, and they were just kind of, some were looking at me and they were just kind of hanging out. And I saw one person just kind of sitting there, and part of them looked like their face was animated and it was coming into being physical. So my experience hasn't been to go to an anime place necessarily, but I have seen animation. And when mom was alive, one of the things that she talked about with this whole thing with seeing animation was perhaps I was seeing it in that way because it is sort of the raw data that makes up what our reality is in a way. Yeah. A lot of what I've experienced have been things that I just simply were very difficult for me to understand, and that's one of the things that I could never ever have predicted. You know, you ask questions, but if you ask questions like what is our purpose and what was the beginning like and stuff, I have always said this, and I say this because I've experienced it: be prepared to see something that you don't understand. Because I think that our conscious minds, they do have limits. They're focused on navigating the 3D world. And so it's hard for our conscious minds to grasp what's going on. But our more expanded selves, I think, understand it all, right? So that's a part of it. The last part I want to do with this very long video, I'm looking at the time right now. Do I struggle? And I wanted to talk about this real quick because I haven't been able to really get out there lately. And yeah, I guess you could call it struggling. I felt a little bit frustrated that it hasn't been happening as much. I'm still having dreams and having other experiences here and there, but I'm not getting out there the way that I used to. I think a part of it still may be the mourning process with my mother. But, you know, I do struggle. And for those that are struggling, I always want to say this to you because I feel my heart breaks for so many people that I see that are struggling with this and wanting to get away from this place and stuff. Please, please, please don't beat yourself up. Please, please, please don't be horrible to yourself. Trust me when I tell you that if you're able to accomplish your goal, what you're going to understand is there's more of you out there. You're not going to be able to escape the being that you are. You're going to have to face it, whether you stay here or whether you go out there, because you are out there as well. Trust me, there's a lot of you out there. So I want you to keep that in mind. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on this long Tuesday journey with me. And until next time, take care.